probably agree on.
Yeah, the playoff team for sure.
No deal.
I mean, I tell you what, I don't think there was a more accurate state. And
if they struggle again, I mean, I don't think there's any way you can keep Alex Critch, but.
What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here. It's another edition of my summer school series on the Cover 3 podcast. That's our college football preview series. And today I want to talk a little Louisville. So I'm going to head to the Authority. That's Cardinal Authority with Jody Demling, my man. What's going on, dude?
Hey, what's up? It's been a while, and it's been a long off season, but we're here. I love talking football. Let's go.
No doubt, man. So last year, and I know I said this on your radio show as well, we talked to Jeff Brom at ACC Media Day, and it's a question you kind of have to ask if a team has a bit of a cakewalk schedule, and most of the coaches will shove it off or just kind of brush it off, and he did not. He was like, no, we realize we have an opportunity in front of us, and Louisville went out and did something with that opportunity. They made the ACC championship game and had a really, a season that had to get everybody in the city pretty damn excited, I would assume. But I want to talk about building on that effort. Where, if anywhere, do you think this team is noticeably better than it was last year?
I think I would say they're going to be better at quarterback as long as Tyler Shough stays healthy, and they knock wood every time they talk about that. I think that's an upgrade for Louisville at quarterback this year. Jack Plummer was just fine last year, but there were things he couldn't do in the Jeff Brom offense. We didn't see the real Jeff Brom offense last year, A, because of Tyler or because of Jack Plummer and some limitations that he had, and B, they didn't have a real tight end last year. So I think that's the biggest thing, the biggest difference to me is that this is going to go back to the Jeff Brom offenses that we saw at Purdue, that we saw at Western Kentucky, to where they're going to use that tight end. They're going to do some things with the wide receivers and move guys all around. To me, that's the biggest difference. People, I think when teams are scouting Louisville this year, they're going to look at last year's film But by the time you get to game 3 or game 4, they're going to be like, we're not looking at last year's film. We're looking at this year's film, and then we're going back to Purdue, because I do think it's going to be different this year.
I mean, you're looking at 7 new starters on offense. Who are the tight ends that, assuming increased tight end use, like I think you just alluded to, who are we expecting to see the ball a lot at tight end?
I mean, I think Mark Redmond is kind of the guy. He's been on the watch list the last 2 years at San Diego State. He's got 1 year left of eligibility. He's not a guy who was here for spring, so he's a little under the radar. But Jeff Brom thinks he could be one of the best tight ends in the country. Thinks he could be one of the better guys he's had in a long line of some pretty good, tight ends in the Brom offense. Mark Redmond's the guy to start with, but then you look at Jamari Johnson, the former 4-star from Inglewood, California. 6'5", 265, and he's really worked on his body. He's got great balance. He can catch just about anything. He's a huge target, and I expect him to have kind of a breakout year. You talk about those two guys, and then you've got Isaiah Cummings, who's a transfer from Kentucky, Jaleel Skinner, a transfer from Miami, and Nate Kariski, who played the position fairly well last year as a kind of in a rotation of guys that they said, okay, we need you to do what you can do best, and then we're going to use somebody else for that and kind of piece it together. And that's what they did last year. But I think Redmond and the emergence of Johnson are huge.
So let's fast forward here, or depending on when we release this, use a time machine to go back. Who's a guy who you don't think will be voted maybe first or second team all ACC, who postseason have a pretty good chance to be on that list?
Chris Bell, no question about it in my mind, the wide receiver. I think he's a guy, 6'2", 220. He comes from Yazoo City, Mississippi. He had an okay freshman year to where he adjusted. He was here and he was kind of did some things for Louisville under Scott Satterfield. Last year, had trouble picking up the offense at the beginning of the season. By the middle of the year, kind of had caught his stride and was pretty good. He and Tyler Shough have spent a lot of time together this spring, and now will throughout the summer and into fall camp. And I think he is going to be the guy for Louisville that emerges as that number one wide receiver. Ja'Cory Brooks, the transfer from Alabama, is going to be great, I believe, in this offense. He was out all spring and is back now. But I do think Chris Bell is the guy at the end of the year we're going to look back and go, man, this guy really, really came on strong. I said this time last year, I think I said Jamari Thrash was the guy. He emerged as that. I just think in this offense, Chris Bell becomes wide receiver number 1 for Louisville.
And for all you college fantasy players out there, Jeff Brom offenses, they play favorites.
Yes.
Like Jeff Brom will throw the ball to his favorite guy, or direct the quarterback to throw the ball to his favorite guy 100, 105 times if he's really that level of stuff. We've seen that largely throughout his career, Jody. Run game last year was definitely a strength at times. Whole new backfield, I believe. How do you think that'll shake out?
I honestly think I'm not going to say they're going to be better than last year. Isaac Garindo ended turning out to be fantastic for Louisville after he transferred from Wisconsin. Jawar Jordan, we knew Jawar Jordan was going to have a great season under Jeff Brom, but this year it's a little different. They've got 3 guys. They've got 2 guys who have experience. Maurice Turner has experience at Louisville. Donald Chaney has experience at Miami. I think those are the 2 guys at the beginning of the year that are going to be the main guys. And then after that, Keyshawn Brown is a guy who the Louisville staff is really high on. He played 1 game last year as a freshman, as a true freshman. I think he had 75 yards against Murray State. People were like, why is this guy not running more at the time? So he really looked good in spring. And then they're so excited about the two young guys. They've got Isaac Brown, a freshman out of Homestead, Florida. I think they're going to have a hard time keeping him off of the field, at least in some sort of package. He's as fast as getting through the line and getting through the holes. He's not a big dude, but he is Jawar Jordan. He wears number 25 like Jawar Jordan. He is Jawar Jordan reincarnated pretty much, and maybe even a little bit faster. And then Duke Watson's a freshman who just got here in May, but already has really kind of turned their heads. And they think that the 5 that they've got this year are going to be just as good as what they had last year. It's kind of wild to think about because you don't think about Jeff Brom in running game. And I said, with the tight end this year, it's going to be a little different, but he's still going to have to he's going to be able to use this backfield and lean on this running game at times.
So there was a lot of hubbub of guys transferring in the winter window and then transferring out in the spring window, or sometimes transferring in and out during the spring window. Can you kind of sort through this for me about like who does Louisville actually care about losing, and who are they just kind of like not mind that they're gone?
Well, I mean, I think of the guys who came in the spring that then left and are no longer on the roster. I do think Penny Boone is the guy. I mean, it's obviously you look at him. He had a great career at Toledo, at Maryland, and then Toledo. He's a guy who was going to come in and get a ton of reps in this backfield. Again, I think one of those guys we just talked about probably would have left after spring ball had Penny Boone still been on this roster. So you're talking about maybe for 1 year of Penny Boone, Keyshawn Brown, who they really like, he's a guy who could have probably left, or Maurice Turner, and so you're talking about a couple years for here or there. Yes, he is a loss. He's the guy that is a loss. But other than that, really the guys that they lost, I'm not going to say they didn't really want them, because I think they wanted everybody. I mean, they took them at one point or another because they really wanted them, but they weren't too sad about the other guys because they've got other pieces or other parts of this team that they can do it. And again, Penny Boone was the guy that left that I think that they thought, okay, we like that guy we could have used. The portal thing is so crazy. There's so many stories. You hear this, you hear that, you hear this. I think it's some variation of in between of the 14 different stories that we've heard about each one of these guys. It's a variation of a little bit of every one of those stories. And but like I said, a guy like Tyler Barron is a really good player. What happened when he was here? First of all, he never practiced in spring because he was injured the entire time. So they never actually saw him on the field. What happened, what transpired and led him to leave? Again, I think he would have definitely played if he was healthy, but they feel like they've put in some good replacements for him.
Defensively, do they have a chance to be better?
I think they have 2 of the best defensive players in the ACC, in Quincy Riley and Ashton Gelati. I think they're deeper than they were last year. Definitely in the secondary. You can look down the secondary and go, man, they've got some dudes back there. You throw in a guy like Corey Thornton from UCF or Tamari McDaniel from McDonald from Tennessee. Guys like that they didn't have last year. Opposite of Quincy Riley, they're going to be improved. I think Quincy's a lockdown. Opposite of him, they're going to be improved. Safety-wise, they're going to be better. Remember, MJ Griffin, we talked about him last year. When we did this, MJ Griffin was a guy that Louisville thought was going to be one of their 2 or 3 best defensive players last year. He got hurt in fall camp, I think the 2nd or 3rd day of fall camp, and was out for the entire season. So he's back. They've got some pieces there. Up front, I think it's going to be pieced together a little bit, and there's some question marks. What's a guy like Thor Griffith from Harvard? How? By the way, I love that name. Anybody with a name of Thor on the defensive line is my favorite. But how is Thor Griffith going to translate? I mean, I know we've had several folks in our network that have said he's kind of the under the radar kind of guy, kind of the guy that could be the guy at the end of the year going, man, this guy turns out to be a 2nd or 3rd team all conference kind of type of guy. They've got pieces like that to make it. So yes, I think to go back to your question, I think they can be better. I'm not going to say they're going to be better and the schedule is going to be tougher, but I do think defensively they're deeper and they have a chance to be better than they were last year.
Where other than corner and running back are they the deepest?
I'd say probably go back to the offense and go back to the offensive line because, I mean, they've got so many dudes on the offensive line. Really, when you look at that and you look at the offensive line, Ronaldo Brown missed all of last year. Or I'm sorry, he got hurt in the Pittsburgh game. So he got hurt in pregame warmups of the Pittsburgh game. And that's kind of when they took their downturn after that. Like they started to go down a little bit after that one. He'll be back by spring. Monroe Mills, who's a transfer from Texas Tech, and Trevante Sylvester, who was here last year and is a transfer from Houston, I think are probably their 2 best pieces. And those are 2 guys that, obviously one didn't start when he was here last year and one wasn't here. They love Lance Robinson from Houston. They love Austin Collins, who they've had from here, and he's a redshirt junior now, and he's been around. Pete Nigra is a guy from Northern Illinois who will be the center. They'll put him in there. And then I haven't even talked about Michael Gonzalez, who I think is the best NFL prospect on the line, perhaps the best NFL prospect on this team, really, when you look at it. Michael Gonzalez, 6'5", 305 pounds. He started pretty much every game he's played at Louisville. Decided to come back for 1 more year, and I think he's going to be big for them. And then speaking of big, Jonathan Mendoza during spring was their left tackle, 6'9", 320, a transfer from Yale. So I mean, that's 9 names right there that I've already mentioned, and I haven't mentioned former 4-star and one of their highest recruits ever, Madden Sanker, who's kind of developed a little bit, and then they've got some other guys, some other transfers that they've put in. They're really deep at the offensive line. They really can go 2 waves of linemen.
That's not an answer we get commonly here on this show. This schedule, though, is a lot harder than last year. I think both in terms of who you play, where you play them, at Notre Dame, at Clemson, at Kentucky. You host Miami on that's a Saturday game. Okay. And then I just flat out hate the timing of the bye weeks here. I mean, like you play Austin Peay and then Jacksonville State, and then you need a break. Like I feel like it's my 4-year-old's like, Dad, I need some water. Like we just went outside. Like,
so to go back and before the schedule, just to talk to, just talking to the coaches and the staff and Coach Brum and the athletic folks, it was kind of like, where is Stanford going to be in the whole thing? That's the big thing, because but as well as I do, without knowing, 12-day advance is when the time, it's going to be a 9, 10, 11 o'clock Eastern time start. It's going to give the ACC something on the ACC network or on some network on a late night Saturday night. That's what it's going to end up being. So to me, that was the whole thing about the bye weeks. Like, where do you put that? And There was talk, or at least the rumblings early on was that Stanford was going to end up being that third game, and then they get a bye week. Well, they get a bye week in the third week, and it's like, I don't understand that one, and I think it does. I don't think it does them any good, to be honest. I mean, I think it really makes that Georgia Tech game a tougher game. It's at home. They should be okay in it, but you're playing Austin Peay and Jacksonville State, and then you're taking a bye week, and it's just kind of like, I think it makes that game a tough game. Then it's at Notre Dame. To me, SMU is a scary one on the schedule. I don't care where it's at. I think SMU is going to be improved. And then Virginia and Miami, and then Boston College, and then another bye week. It's a tough one. Clemson, and then a bye week. It's just a tough schedule. Because of the timing of some of the games and where they're at. And think about that November 16th at Stanford. And I know you've got Pittsburgh coming home, but you basically lose all of Sunday, and you lose a lot of Monday, probably trying, as far as the guys are concerned, with recovery. So you're really kind of taking on Pittsburgh with a short week in the second to last week of the season.
100%. I also, if you want to circle a trap game here, it's going to play Boston College on short rest on a Friday night, but sandwiched between Miami and at Clemson. Like, if you want to have a kind of a, not that I buy into this necessarily fully, but a letdown look ahead sandwich spot, that would be it. And they're, as a veteran of the ACC, they're going to do that red bandana stuff, which is cool. Obviously, like, the guy saved a lot of people in 9/11, but it also is a pain in the ass to play up there in an atmosphere that is normally not tough to play in at Boston. So, I don't love the way this sets up, but Tyler Shuck clearly has the physical tools to be the best quarterback in the ACC. I don't think he is, but it's not. There's a non-zero chance that there's some outcomes of this season could dictate that he is, I guess. Like, there's some potential there.
I was going to say, it wouldn't shock me at the end of the year if he's regarded as one of the top guys in the league. It would not shock me at all. Now, for Tyler Shuck, and really for this whole Louisville team and season, it's all about his health, and I joked when you and I came on, I said, they've got him in bubble wrap and they put him up. He just got married, and he got married the last week of spring ball, then came back and they did the spring game, and he did his honeymoon. I actually ran into him. The PGA Championship was here, and I ran into Tyler and his bride at the PGA Championship. We were talking for a second, and he was like, "I'm just ready to go," kind of thing. And you can tell he is he's so mature. He's been through a lot, and you can tell that this is different for him. He came here for a reason. He came here for a purpose. Feels like that Jeff Brom and Brian Brom can help him get to where he wants to be and get to those goals that he wants. And I really think he can. I was so impressed when I would go, not necessarily the spring game, but went and watched a few practices this spring. And when you just sit there and you watch his command with the guys and the respect that they have for him because of what he has done so far, up until the beginning of summer camp, I guess, and that kind of thing, what he's done with these guys off of the field, as far as getting to know everybody and the extra work that they've put in, you can tell that this is a dude that really wants it. And it's a guy that he has a lot of respect from his teammates.
We're and some guys just bounce around forever and then can't get healthy, and then they hit. Yesterday, we're recording this on the 4th, and on the 3rd, Larry Allen, who's probably the best guard ever to play the sport of football, passed, and I looked up his Wikipedia, and the guy, he, was seriously injured as a youth a couple times, including being stabbed 12 times in defense of his brother. Then was 4 high schools in 4 years, didn't graduate high school, had to go to a junior college, then had to take a year off, and then didn't get in any scholarship offers. So he went D2 at Sonoma State, and then becomes the best guard ever to play, arguably the best player in the sport of football. So some of these guys that bounce around, but they keep getting more interest and more interest. And sometimes it's because the coaches are like, oh, this guy has real tools, and maybe I can get it at him. So I'm excited to see what Louisville can do this year. We'll be following all your stuff on Cardinal Authority, and Jody, I really appreciate it, man. This is going to be fun.
It is going to be fun. Like I said, the schedule's a lot tougher. You're going to see a different Jeff Brom offense. It's going to be a lot of fun this year for Louisville football.
All right, take care, buddy.